You probably know what internal dialogue means.
Thankfully, I can, still like trust people.
There is a danger present, even though there's not.
Yeah, exactly.
So, hi everyone, and welcome to the series Solutions to Complex Human Behaviors with Samppa.
Yay! Do we
Yeah.
actually offer solutions ever?
Suggestions?
Okay. Suggestions to complex human behaviors
I
with some.
We're saying, I don't know at the end, so we don't ruin your life.
Neither of us are professionals, so whatever we say, always consult a professional about it.
These are just some tips. I don't know.
Ideas, thoughts,
Ideas.
yes, which you want to be critical about.
We researched them, and
Researched doesn't make us professionals.
yeah.
We're off to a good start.
So my name is Anastasia Kontinen, and this is Samuel Happanen, and he also has a YouTube channel.
Link below. Or somewhere here. Or, yeah, I don't know.
In this episode, we're talking about traumatic experiences.
Yeah, of sorts.
We have a letter, which I'm gonna read now, and then we're gonna discuss. A couple of years ago, I had a very difficult period in my life where I lost my faith in multiple people. Those people were very close to me, and I also, during that time, had a traumatic experience. I got through those times quite quickly and don't have any more problems with trust in others. My problem is when some memories from these times come back, I have a hard time dealing with the feelings it creates. For example, I start to feel really bad, sometimes angry, helpless, sad, anxious, and even experience some physical changes like hands start to sweat, my heart beats fast, and the only thing I can think of are those things that happen to me. Sometimes these feelings go away quickly, but sometimes I can go a few days having these negative feelings. So how to not feel them or how to get over them quickly instead of having them take over me. So maybe we can start discussing what is trauma. And what I've learned is that it's a negative event which we can't properly understand, process, or move on from. Nor can we properly remember it or reflect on its nature.
Well, I suppose when trauma happens in your childhood, it's kind of easy to understand that you're put in a situation where you can't really do much about it. And you just kind of, you're a passive receptor. And then it's that helplessness that kind of gets stuck, and those emotions get really stuck in you because you don't have means to process and deal with what's going on. So obviously that imprint of those negative experiences stays in you, and then you might have certain kind of triggers that spark those same emotions now when you grow up. A good example of this is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. That's a bit more of a severe, especially when you're in a highly traumatic situation that you cannot escape, and that may cause those same feelings and same thoughts to reoccur in new situations with some triggers or so. They can re-traumatize you because they're so severe.
Some source says that like traumatized people feel really scared and even scared of the world in general. And sometimes what is important to do is to answer a question. It's not what I was afraid of in the past, but what I'm afraid of that will happen in the future, which can help us understand what is the nature of this traumatic experience and how to potentially cure it.
If it's so interesting when we talk about these kind of things and talk about curing it. It's because we cure disease. It's like you don't have a disease anymore, but it's like these are different. I feel like where it's a certain, well, I'm not sure if I should say construct, but it's your brain is now wired in a certain way to react to certain things. It's not a disease necessarily that you just kind of fall into. It's your brain just functions in a certain way. And now it's more about trying to restructure and make your brain function in another way. But it's more so like practicing a muscle. When it comes to mental issues or challenges, are they things that we can totally get rid of? Or do we just get better with them? And that's a good question. And I don't have an answer to that. But I guess when it comes to trauma, we can definitely improve our situation. And sure, maybe there's a way to make it so that those old traumas don't really bother you anymore. I sure hope that's a thing.
It's interesting you said that you believe it's like very different from normal physical diseases. Because recently I had the thought that once I had like also a very bad mood and sort of like an anxiety attack, and in those moments I feel like I can't take it anymore. I have to do something about it. I feel so like powerless, and I just want it to end, and I'm ready to do something really bad, you know.
Yeah.
That's kind of the feeling. It's interesting that when, let's say you have a stomach ache, you don't think that you're gonna have it forever. You're probably just gonna go take a pill and knows that after hour it's gonna go away.
Yeah.
But like it can be similar with these negative emotions. Like it comes in a moment, and you can think the same way. Like, well, it's gonna go away probably. Maybe I take a pill. Like maybe I go and do something positive. Like I don't know, listen music I like, or watch something funny, or talk to a friend, or instead of focusing on that and believing that's how you're gonna feel till the rest of your life.
Yeah, I think with emotions, it's kind of easier to sometimes think that this is gonna be around for a long time, and then we just try to get rid of it as quickly as possible. People might usually struggle with is just the fact that they just react so strongly, or they react so easily to emotions, rather than paying attention what's actually going on. We tend to be more of reactive agents, where emotion comes, then we interpret it somehow, and then we react to it. And if we always stay in that reactive space, we really don't have as much control as we probably should in order to make it better. Because as long as we're a reactive agent to those things, those emotions are going to push us to however our minds interpret that. So when it comes to like trauma and triggers, I think this happens quite often, where the trigger and the subsequent emotion is so strong that you don't have as much control in just stopping yourself. And something that we commonly do is we try to think those feelings away. Where it's like, okay, I'm going to try to like analyze this now and just think, where does it come from? And I'm trying to understand it. But when we try to do that, we actually probably make it worse. Where we're just ruminating, which means you're constantly just circulating in those thoughts, which in turn strengthen those anxious emotions. Because if we're not finding a solution, it starts feeling like we're totally stuck and that we're going to be there forever, or at least a long time, which is always so comfortable. I'm of the belief that when it comes to dealing with emotions, our intellect can help, but it's not going to give us the solution necessarily. The solution might just be really sitting in the emotion, allowing it to be there, just observing it, and helping your mind to not go too far with false interpretations of it.
The subconscious mind plays a very important role in it. And so what happens is that when we have an experience, we have this senses which this plug into external environment, and then the brain processes the data, and neurons organize themselves into network and patterns, and that makes brain to have a chemical which we call the feeling or emotion. So when we have this thought and a feeling, and it repeats the same thought, the same feeling for many times, then it creates, you can call like attitude. And when we have those attitudes repeat, then we form this belief system,
Yeah.
which is already hard to break.
It's like if you imagine your brain or your mind as like a field of snow, and you're skiing. Well, if there are no skiing tracks, it's gonna be quite heavy to like get forward. It's a little bit of work to go a certain way. But if you've gone there once, you've got those tracks there, and the more you go that track, the easier it's gonna go on that track, and that's probably the tracks that's gonna be the most used. And that's what happens when we have reoccurring thoughts about things, or we have reoccurring the behaviors of sorts. When we react to certain things, now it's going to be easier to react because you're strengthening that neural pathway. The brain is like a muscle. Like, you got to train the things, and the things you train most will get strengthened. But unfortunately, our brains are constantly working, even if we're not paying attention. So it's going to strengthen certain areas themselves. But coming back to being aware, paying attention, mindfulness stuff, that's pretty useful.
So new connections in brain happen when we have new experiences, and we can choose to have them.
Well, sometimes those experiences are forced on us. That's why trauma happens, where it's like it's impactful enough to make a specific dent in our brain. And now, because we've been hurt, it's the same thing. You touch a hot stove as a kid and you burn your hand. Now you're afraid of stoves because it hurts you, but you don't realize that, if the stove's not on, it's harmless. But it's more so then returning safely into that situation when there's no danger, and being able to revisit it with no harm that happens, and so forth. That's an important thing to do. Kind of restructuring those beliefs about and seeing it as it is. I think that's it.
Our memories are the most strongest events which have the strongest feelings involved in it.
So I guess to this letter, there might be these beliefs connected that needs to be reinterpreted, and maybe some grief that needs to be gone through.
Yes. Thank you for your thoughts.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a call now
we?
with our participant.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, ready?
Hi, Anastasia.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you so much for agreeing to participate.
Yeah, we're pretty excited.
Yeah,
there's
thank you.
There's a lot of questions we want to ask you.
So the first question is, can you tell a little bit more about how this happens, that you get in this emotional states when you feel this very bad? And
usually it's something like, for example, a picture from that period of my life that kind of brings it up. Like, for example, last weekend I just opened my old computer and found the pictures from that period of my life, and then it's kind of just brought up all the memories. The other day I was watching a TV show, and there was a kind of similar thing happening in the TV show to a girl that happened to me, and it also kind of like triggered the experience.
If you feel comfortable, do you want to describe a little bit of how that feels? Like, what is it that happens to you?
It's usually how it starts is just I get a bit really like anxious, or this kind of feeling that you can't really describe, but this like you cannot really speak, or sometimes there is even this little bit of knot in my throat that I don't want to cry, but just like this kind of very like I cannot really speak, like a lot of physical changes, even like my hands are sweating, and my heart is starting to beat fast, and then just like all the memories come in, and I kind of feel this very negative feeling that kind of is reliving the experience again, like that I cannot really go back and change it, and then it starts to feel like really helpless, and like like also that starts to stress me out more, and it's really hard to kind of get out of it. And usually how I get out of it is just maybe talk about it to my partner or whoever is there. But sometimes I cannot really talk about it. So then it's just like I just start to deal with it myself.
Do you feel like it ever gets out of control, or is it something that just really bothers you?
I mean, it depends. It really depends on the kind of what triggered it. Like, for example, the last time when I was watching a movie, and in the movie that the exact same thing was happening, it really like triggered me like really hard, and there it was really strong, and I was like even started to cry. But then another time it is more just like I can do the daily stuff, like I can just cook or I can do whatever, but it's still there kind of bugging my mind, and it's hard for me to focus on anything else. Maybe someone else is talking to me, but I cannot really focus on that. So sometimes it's a bit harder, and sometimes it's not so much.
So I'm really curious about this. Have you ever gone to revisit these memories with, like, let's say, like a professional who, like a therapist or a
No.
psychologist?
Yeah, no, actually, no, that's the thing. I actually like recently been looking into it because probably I mean, I know that maybe that's what I should do, but I actually never got there to revisit them and like to actually talk with like a professional about it. I mean, I've been talking with a friend of mine,
Yeah.
but it's not a professional, so it's probably very different.
Yeah, it's so interesting sometimes because when these kind of traumatic, like those triggers come up and they cause all these feelings and these anxious emotions and physical reactions, like it's so easy to interpret them and like as there is a danger present even though there's not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And
that's
then
true.
how much do these things affect your everyday life? Like, do you feel like they bother you a lot or just kind of here and there?
I would say just here and there. I wouldn't say a lot. Like, thankfully, I
Gotcha.
can live my life normally and all that. But there are like, well, there are like like the topic itself. It's a bit sensitive. So, for example, when it comes up on a gathering or when talking with friends randomly, and a similar topic comes up. Um, and it kind of reminds me of the past. It's a bit hard to cope with that, but actually it doesn't really bother me. Like I'm really like living my life normally, but only these times when it's like something triggers, that's difficult.
So you mentioned something about the danger you feel. So would you say that there is something like you are scared of, or you have a feeling like something gonna happen to you again, or?
I would say that it's kind of the memories and kind of just this reliving the experience, like I mean, I don't really know. Actually, now I would really have to go back to that feeling, but I think it's more just like I'm feeling that I'm still there, in that state, in that present moment when it happens. So it's kind of maybe that's why I feel the danger, I think. So I'm not really scared that something like that will happen again, but more just like feeling the same thing I felt back then.
I wonder how you thinking looks like in that when you're in that situation. Do you um is it do you sometimes find yourself just kind of like overthinking it, like thinking those things over and over and over, getting stuck in that, or is it easy for you
Yes,
just to
yes,
kind of
exactly.
like detach from it? How does it
No,
go?
it's definitely like just thinking it over and over and like the same thing, like
Yeah.
just going back and forth and feeling like this helplessness that I cannot change it, and like
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just this overthinking.
Like this is I'm not sure if you've thought about that before, but
Mm-hmm.
if you would have to give yourself a reason of why you keep on uh like
Hmm.
rotating in those thoughts and just
Yeah, I mean
circulating there, why do
that's
you
a
feel like
really
you
good
do that?
question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I was thinking actually on this, so yeah, it definitely crossed my mind that why and not that why I'm thinking of it, but like why it makes me feel so bad still.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that maybe the reason, which I of course don't know if this is the reason, but you know, I never really got to like confront those people that were in these memories that I described, and like I don't know if they know that what they kind of what happened to me by them, or what it did to me,
Mm.
is actually really like bad, and it's causing me these stuff. So like I'm thinking that maybe if I could tell them somehow, or like at least just kind of confront them about it, that would be maybe somehow helping. I don't know.
Yeah.
But maybe that's why, because I'm just wondering if they ever think of it the same way I do. And it also kind of makes me sometimes angry, and this kind of like that they don't have to like suffer with these thoughts or something like that.
Yeah. Do you feel like they've got power over you in a way?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly what I feel.
So in a way, them violating you somehow, you've kind of given your power to them, and they have control over you now.
Exactly, yeah.
Gotcha.
That's exactly what I feel. And maybe that's what makes me angry as well in those moments. And like
Yeah.
kind of just want to I don't know, revenge it, or something
Mm.
like that.
Yeah.
It would be nice to just kind of like have a way to deal with these thoughts and feelings, and maybe not feel that the power is gone or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like these patterns of thoughts have created some belief system in you now?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, actually, thankfully I can still like trust people, so that part of me didn't really like, it wasn't really affected, and I'm really glad for that. I mean, not really. I wouldn't say that it is like affecting my value system. More just like, could be that I have some this kind of prejudgmental thoughts of situations or people who are similar to those that I was encountered with.
So you are not like feeling that that's gonna happen again or anything like this?
No, I mean, of course, it sometimes crosses my mind that if it was to happen again, like, but it's more like about me, that how would I act, and maybe that I could do, more, or I could act differently. So, like, kind of like preparing myself to that.
How much have these experiences affected the way you see yourself? Have they had a massive, like a significant negative impact on that?
Maybe they affected my confidence a bit. Like I feel that I was like I was a lot more confident before these experiences, in that sense that I didn't really question myself, and I didn't really like question my abilities and that sort of things. And maybe nowadays like I question it a lot more, and I think yes, it definitely affected it a bit negatively, but also actually positively, because I feel in a way that since I got out of this very bad experience, I feel sometimes it kind of strengthened me also some way.
How does your you probably know what internal dialogue means? Like when you
Yeah,
speak to
like
yourself within your head, like how does it sound like generally?
generally speaking, or are you talking about like during these periods of
Well, how
experiences, or
about both? Like how about both?
it's quite like positive, or at least I try to like encourage myself internally that you can do this, like you're really like strong. And I mean, I don't know, I do a lot of exercise, for example, and during those times especially I talk to myself in that way. And then during these triggered periods, I would say it's more like talking to myself and saying like, oh, you could have done things differently so it wouldn't have happened, and that sort of things. Or like, oh, what would you do if now you could revenge this person, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Now, if you go back thinking the way things went, like if you try to look at it as realistically as possible, do you feel like you could have done things?
I really don't know. Of course, I wondered, yes, maybe I could have, but at the same time, I just, like, maybe not.
Like, because it's so interesting when we do that to ourselves. Then
Right,
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
how do you blame yourself for that if it's just a mistake? And it's
Yeah,
like
exactly,
you
yeah.
couldn't really do anything else because there was no
Yeah,
point of realizing that, oh, I could have looked at it a little bit different.
I mean, I've been thinking as, sometimes our thoughts, because our thoughts we cannot choose. And they are really weird because they just appear, and really we cannot choose like what to think next. Like, they just come.
Yeah. Have you ever done any kind of like meditation or mindfulness
Yeah,
exercises?
I do. Lately, I've been doing a lot actually. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what made me also realize that thoughts, they just appear and we don't really select them. That okay, next I'm gonna think of this. They just really come and go. So yeah, we're not really responsible for what we're thinking of, but it's more like kind of our reaction or how we kind of deal with those thoughts.
Do you feel like that's helped you in these kind of
Yeah,
issues that you've had?
yeah, definitely. I learned like this kind of technique on how to get out of this very like bad state of mind. Also, like for example, like this kind of panic attacks that think of three things that you can see or three things that you can hear, and it's really like helped me a lot
Mm-hmm.
to also in these situations. But like overall, I think in life it's made me a bit calmer person as well.
I got so many questions.
Yeah.
So in your situation right now, what do you wish that you could change?
I mean, I know I cannot really change the past, so I kind of already accepted that. What I wish to change or would be to deal with these feelings a bit better, like not to get so controlled by them.
Yeah. Wow. I'm happy to hear that you're able to have exercises like that. It's so nice to hear that you don't really sound hopeless about that. That's always a hopeful thing because that also it signifies a lot of power to be able to influence where you're gonna go with it. Because you actually have a belief that you can do something about that.
Thank you so much.
Also, I feel that this little talk kind of made me also realize things. So that's positive thing. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you guys and take care.
You too.
Yeah.
That was an interesting call.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really liked how there was that hopeful aspect about her. But I could definitely tell that there's struggle as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to see that her view on life is not disturbed and she trusts other people.
Mm-hmm.
But there is definitely this moment where she needs to deal with emotions which still come back.
And I can see whether that's really troublesome sometimes. If that seems to be something that happens too often and too inconveniently, those kind of things would be pretty good to go through with a therapist or someone who's qualified to help out.
Yeah.
What were some of your thoughts from the call?
She was really aware of herself and her like inner world and mature. So I wasn't having much worries about her.
Yeah. And it was interesting something that you said after we stopped the call and took a little break, where it's like that you kind of mentioned that she seems so put together, but then there's this one thing that's kind of off, and it kind of seemed like, would you want to describe that?
So despite the fact that it seems that everything is fine now and also her belief system is correct, like of the world.
Close.
Yeah, let's say.
Yeah.
No one probably.
Or at least somewhat truthful. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but like, it's interesting why it keeps happening.
Yeah.
But then now I thought about that maybe that's not the right question to ask. Like, we don't need to focus on why, maybe, but what to do when it does.
Maybe experiencing those negative emotions and observing them. We talked a little bit about the mindfulness aspect.
Yeah.
And willingness is a big part of that. You voluntarily allow yourself to just observe and to feel those emotions rather than try to avoid them by overthinking them through. And
it's important to do not label the emotions like bad and good.
Yeah.
Like they are all have right to exist. They are meant to be experienced. When we have this feeling, we might feel like it has control over us. But if we just acknowledge that this is a feeling, I'm feeling it, and I still have control over myself, then this feeling stops being so like scary because we're not anymore afraid that it's going to control us.
Yeah. That's true. I think sometimes we kind of think that, when we get physically hurt, let's say you get a splinter or something in your skin, and it hurts, and it's like, well, then you're like, well, just take it out, and it'll soon heal, and you don't feel all that much. And I feel like we easily think with that way about our emotions. When there's negative emotions, we're like, I just don't want to feel negative, and I just don't want to feel these things, so I'm just gonna try and get rid of them. But it seems that emotions work a little bit differently. It's more like emotions have something to say, and the way they go away is that they need to be listened to. But the way you listen to them is just allowing yourself to feel them. And as soon as they've had their say, that's when there's those emotions are like, okay, we're done, or we're gonna go. And obviously you got triggers, and triggers just they come and go, and they might appear at some really inconvenient times. But again, it's like, well, that's it. Then there's these things that your body's trying to communicate, but then you can start a dialogue with it. But we can't do that. We just become reactionary. We just react and allow our mind to just have the first impulse of interpreting it as danger or something like that. We gotta take a step back and just start observing, and then having a dialogue of, okay, what am I actually feeling? What is it? How does it feel like? Where does it feel? And things like that. Rationalization is, when you want to put in a rational element, make sure that you're not just reacting to something. Make sure you're doing it in a mindful, aware manner, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that overthinking is not a way to escape the emotion, because we want to end it.
Yeah, it's true. And it's like, you can almost liken it to, let's say you have a child, and a child like that falls down and hurts him or herself, and then there's like a bruise on the knee, and the child's crying, and, well, okay, it might hurt, but I think children often cry because they got upset, or like there's just emotions that they don't know how to handle with. Well, the parent can be like, let's solve your stuff, like, let's solve this, don't cry anymore, like, let's just do this, instead of like, what actually helps is just reassurance, like, okay, that everything's gonna be fine, and so forth. But if you start psychoanalyzing the child, and just like just trying to like rationalizing for the child, like, oh, it's a bruise, like, it's like, you just try to do, like, get it away, try to remove it. It's like, sure, it might help to solve the bruise, but there's still need for emotional reassurance, and that's how it calms down. But we cannot rationalize it away, and when we try to rationalize things away, it really is an avoidance method, because you're just trying to push things away and not acknowledge them. Intellectual problems we can solve intellectually, but emotional problems need to be solved emotionally. Or at least I think. but that's there seems to be something about that.
My personal thoughts on that, and it's not like, don't quote me or something.
You can tell we're pretty insecure about our professionality here, but that's because we're not pros. Anyways, say what you're gonna say.
That I believe that maybe making life decisions is best based on thinking, but it also might be because I'm thinking type. Maybe that's why I believe like, thinking is more important, because the feelings keep changing. You can have all kind of feelings, but rational thoughts, maybe I trust them a little bit more sometimes.
But that's a good point, but at the same time, I would challenge you a little bit.
Okay.
Like, you do want to listen to your feelings as well, but that's the thing, listen. Like, try to understand what they're trying to say, and then take that into consideration, and then make decisions. Like, it's again, it comes kind of back to black and white. It's like, well, either listen to your emotions or your rationale. Well, no, listen to both. And then, like, try to understand, like, okay, what's the total sum of all these things? What seems to be the wisest thing to do? Like, if you're simply listening to your emotions, as in you're reacting to them, that's not always good, because then you might do things without thinking and actually seeing now, okay, there's things that I might want to watch or watch out for. But at the same time, we can over-rationalize things and not listen to our feelings, where it's the feelings are just screaming at you. It's like, don't do that. That's a stupid thing to do because we're going to suffer if you go and do that. But we're like, oh yeah, feelings should never be trusted. I'm going to rationalize. And then you suffer because you haven't listened. So it's, again, let's just pay attention.
He's a feeling type.
No, I'm actually, I try to be a good balance, but I've burnt my fingers a bit too many times of like not listening to my feelings. So that's why I do want to advocate for this, but I want to understand like what's the best, like rational, not rational, but like reasonable thing. Like, let's just listen to all the messages that are coming from outside, from inside, and just try to make a good enough decision on things.
First of all, realize like what life you want to have.
Yeah.
And then you make all of those decisions.
Yeah. Coming back to the original subject, we veered off a little bit. And I thought was interesting the power thing, was like those people who have treated her poorly kind of hold power over her, where it's like she was in that helpless state. And I think having someone to help you, they can help you revisit those memories in a safe space, like I mentioned before, but definitely, but reform the beliefs about it and realize what was actually going on, and then you might be able to start taking action in taking that power back, and feeling like you've got a bit more control than before, and that those triggers that now have your power, you can kind of try and reclaim that.
Yeah. And in order to build new beliefs, as we remember, if you think from the perspective of how brain works, is having like new experiences. So, for example, having positive experiences about things which you usually had negative.
Yeah.
So maybe that I feel involves this both like thinking and feeling. So you use this thinking to decide how you're gonna be able to have positive experience. So, for example, surround yourself with good people.
Yeah.
And then you can have these positive feelings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of it.
And a really good point about like having positive experiences, because sometimes there's people just think that, okay, I need to think positive thoughts, which can help to a degree, but it's like at the same time, if you think of trauma, it's a physical experience of negative emotion. And if it's connected to certain things, which would be turned into triggers, you might want to start cultivating experiences around those same things, but turn them into positive ones, and realizing that this is not as dangerous as it feels. Of course, you want to be mindful of who you do that with, but just recognizing reality. Sometimes things hurt, but when you're very sensitive to things and you get triggered by those things very easily, then you might definitely want to look who are the safest people around, and then just try to cultivate that. Again, that's why you might need help with it. It's not easy. There's one more thing I was thinking about.
Okay.
Helplessness. Huge part of this. I feel like trauma comes from an experience where you just feel helpless and you have to endure pain that you don't want to feel. Trying to find a sense of defiance in moments where you feel helpless might help you get into a place where you feel like you can take that power back. Where it's like, well, if it's people, for example, if you've been bullied, and let's say you don't have access to that, actually having a conversation with bullies, but like, let's say you go revisit those memories where you've been bullied, like you might try and rethink those experiences in a way of like, well, I'm going to defy my bullies. Like, what would I say? What would I do that? Like, what would I do? Obviously, you want to offer yourself kindness and reassurance of sorts, because now you're really the adult in your life, if you're an adult. But also, how would you treat those bullies as an adult? Well, you might want to defy them and show like, hey, you've got no power over me, and just simulate that and see if something good happens from that. Because I think that's how we deny other people taking our power. Is that we say no. But defiance is really just saying that I've got boundaries and you're not allowed to cross them. And if you cross them, there will be consequences on that. Does
Yeah,
that make sense?
yeah, definitely. I remember that from my past also
Yeah.
when I was a child. That's exactly how I stopped like being bullied.
Yeah.
Is I was very nice and everyone like um not everyone but everyone who wasn't so nice ever treated me not very well until one day I remember this moment. I was sitting at school on a table and my like neighbor over the table was a bully and he would like throw my things away, like he didn't want that I would sit with him but I had to.
A douchebag.
And so
He probably had his reasons, but anyways,
well,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
and so what I did first time in my life then is that so he had his hand broken just recently. He fell from somewhere,
Yeah.
and so I looked at him and I said, if you're gonna like throw my thing again, like I'm gonna break your other arm. And I guess because he just recently had it broken, he has like negative experience.
Yeah.
I'm really afraid of it. Like he never bullied me again
What?
after this phrase. But that was also a moment when I feel like I fell down like from heaven to like hell, sort of like from like the person I was like this sort of angel. And this moment, like I feel like my personality changed. Like it's kind of like when you make a first scene or something and then you become wicked, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm being too negative about
Yeah,
myself.
and this is it's another interesting conversation. Another one we could have about why some people don't dare to be defiant is because they fear that if they become dangerous in some way, or they push an agenda that might hurt someone, they might fear that they become bad. And it's worst if they're bad, then people don't want to love them and they'll leave and all of this stuff. I think quite like just the typical, like let's say back in the day, it's like bullies came to and they just beat you up. But if you have the capacity to beat up the bullies even worse, they would stop. Well, I don't know if this is how it went, but this is like the classic what you see in movies. Is like the one who's the toughest will be left alone without any trouble. But those who are usually the nicest and don't really want to harm anyone, and they're just kind of harmless, they're easy to bully because they're not like the price for bullying them. It's you're just gonna get your rewards as a bully, but you don't have to pay a price of pain of bullying someone. And if there's a threat of sorts, they might reconsider because now there's a price. And if we give a price that people don't necessarily want to pay, they might not want to do that. That's just an idea.
How about turning your other cheek when someone hits you into one?
That's another. That's again.
That's
I mean,
my
that
favorite
could be
topic.
that could be taken as an act of defiance as well. It's like, well, someone slaps you on the other cheek, and you're like, you forgot this one. I don't care if you slap me on the cheek. I can take it. We can still have people abuse us, but we can go about it not giving them their power, but giving them our power.
So it was very interesting conversation, and thank you everyone for watching and joining us today. And if you made it this far, consider subscribing.
Subscribe.
Yeah, and to his channel also.
If you want to.
Yeah,
You don't have to.
at least check it. He's very funny.
I hope so.
I guess I will see you in the next video on Tuesday, like always. Bye.
Adios.
Welcome to another episode of Complex Human Behaviors with Anastasia and Dr. Sputnik.
If you want, I can put a sweater on, so I've got different clothes on
Okay.
than last time. Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Is this good enough? All right.
Welcome to the Complex Human Behavior with Anastasia and Mr. Sweater. I sweat a lot. That's why I'm called Sweater. I sweat.
I don't know. Well, is that good?
Mhm.